So now that I've spoke on basically every NBA team, their situation, what is going on with them, and what's good basically with the league, there is one spot I missed of teams. In my first video, I spoke on all the teams that were inside the playoff picture, or at least in the top eight. Then I spoke about all the teams which were outside of the play-in, but I haven't spoke about the situation with the play-in teams and what their thing is like. I'm going to be talking from the 7th seed to the 10th seed in both conferences because I want to basically recap the league after the trade deadline. So, basically, the league after the trade deadline has definitely been interesting. In the East, we have teams like the Magic, which are the 7th seed, and the Heat, which are the 8th seed, which are now both in pretty much similar, not similar, but in situations where they both look at themselves and they feel pretty confident in their abilities. This is due to the fact that the both of the teams, well, the Orlando Magic look at themselves in a position where they're a young team that's supposed to be rebuilding right now, and now they've basically completely flipped the script by being so good due to their amazing defense. This is due to the fact that they have made changes to the roster. They have had their coach be amazing for them. And they've basically rewired their entire franchise just to make it work defensively, and that has carried them very far. The Orlando Magic, now what they're missing is the development of some of their players and really a true guard that can put it all together, as they have the big man in Paolo and they have the forward in Franz Wagner. Now what they need is someone, kind of a point guard, that can have the ball most of the time and really feed the squad and be able to make those plays. Then you have a team like the Heat, which look at themselves in a much more uncomfortable situation as Jimmy Butler, and rest in peace to the family member, but Jimmy Butler just had a family member which unfortunately passed away, and this is has caused him to be away for some time, even though in the regular season so basically they now lose Jimmy Butler, which obviously in a bad situation, but you still now can't use him, can't play him, and he's gone from the lineup. So in that part, the Miami Heat look pretty rough. Of course, Bam, Hero, and Rozier will win you some games, and they will probably figure it out as they're a good, offensive line without Jimmy. But I do think that not having him will require Jaime Jaquez Jr. to do more, and he recently has not been stepping up to the plate. Then in the East, the final two teams are the Bulls and the Hawks. The Bulls honestly had one of the worst trade deadlines in a while. They were one of the teams that didn't do anything, and that is going to cost them, as they have no real way of improving or rebuilding without actually making a move. And they decided not to do anything, even though they desperately need a move or something to spice up their franchise, because if they don't have that, then they will definitely be suffering, because they have been playing really badly. And now that they did not trade, or they can't do any more moves for the rest of the year, I think they're just going to end up being one of those teams out of the playoffs, which doesn't do anything. After this, we have the Hawks, and the Hawks are great. They're in a great situation because they have a star player, but if they don't fix something soon, Trae Young could easily leave. We know that loyalty in the NBA is spareable, and especially with something so important as a team which has a guy who's averaging 27 points and 11 assists, not being able to even make it to the playoffs and having to stick in the play-in is something that is sad. And in my opinion, Trae Young will probably request a trade if they don't make a big move, which they did not make in the trade deadline. For the West, we have the Pelicans, the Mavericks, the Lakers, and the Warriors. The Warriors just jumped up. So since the Warriors just jumped up, I'm going to do the Jazz because the Warriors, I did them in my previous video. But shout out to the Warriors because they've won 4 straight games. So the Pelicans, they look to be in a pretty good situation. They look like real contenders. They've lost a few games, but really with the Pelicans, it's more about health than anything. They're a team which needs to prioritize having Zion healthy, BI healthy, and all of these guys, CJ McCollum healthy, so that they can actually make a real run without having anything that is impairing them from being their best self. For the Mavericks, their biggest thing is just you need to work. They've won 4 straight games. They're doing great. But if you are not able to make the Mavericks a contender, right, it is due to the personnel that you put around Luka. He's beat great teams and had a monster performance yesterday against the Knicks, against the 76ers. He went crazy against the Bucks. And the Timberwolves, he's lost. So you could tell that Luka's putting in the work, he's putting in, he's getting his stats in, and he's really doing his thing. But you cannot expect something as in the game versus Milwaukee, he dropped almost a 40-point triple-double on a loss. So basically, with the Mavericks is just get Luka some offensive help. Kyrie has been great this season, but get him some real help and make sure to put a competent team around him, and you will be able to win as Luka is just that good. Then, as we keep going down, we have the Lakers, which are probably the most interesting team in the league right now. As with their moves in the trade deadline, they signed Spencer Dinwiddie right after he got bought out by the Nets, which surprises me as Spencer Dinwiddie is probably the worst point guard in the league right now. He's been shooting less than 40% from the field and less than 35% from 3. He's been absolutely garbage, and he hasn't been doing anything well. And I'm not saying this to really put hate on his name, but it's true. You look at the stats, he can't shoot. He's been shooting 39% from the field, 32% from 3. He's been averaging 6 assists and 13 points. But he hasn't had an effective season in the past 2 years in Brooklyn, and I don't know if it's because of the system or because of him. Apart from this, maybe he changes, maybe he gets revitalized on the Lakers. But the Lakers really are just relying right now on that D'Lo keeps playing the way that he's playing, and that they get matchups which are favorable towards them. That way they can actually move up the standings swiftly and can make the playoffs effectively, but we don't even know if that's going to be the case. Finally, I'm going to talk about the Jazz. The Warriors are in the play-in right now, but since I spoke about the Warriors situation yesterday, I'm going to speak on the Jazz situation. And with the Jazz, finally, it is more about with the Jazz. Right now, they just traded away Kelly Olynyk and Fontecchio. Right now, I think it is more about losing games. I think they realized this deep into the season that even though they had a nice run at the start, it is not going to be as effective to win games because being in the play-in is like purgatory, you know? If you get to the play-in, it's like, okay, you did good. You were good enough to get to the play-in. But it's also like you're not going to get a top 5 draft pick. So really what's important about everything that happens, right, is that when you have this type of situation, just what needs to happen with the Jazz right now is that they need to go, make sure to keep Lauri Markkanen happy, make sure to keep their core guys happy, and just ride it out, right, until you get to the point where you can really push to be in the playoffs every season, back like you were when you had Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, and hopefully a championship. So yeah, has been all the play-in teams. You know, I wanted to speak on the whole league through a set of videos because I thought it was going to be good. Because since the trade deadline changes so much, and since we have now pronounced what is more than half the season being over, We're around 50 games in, 55 games in already. So we can really put into perspective what the playoffs are going to start looking like from right now. And I did want to say that was pretty, amazing. The fact that these teams are the ones which are competing right now.